Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Experts podcast. I am Heidi Heiss, and I'm here today with my co-host, Bobby Dyer.
Hello.
Nice try. I still think
That was flawless. Don't even lie. That was perfect.
Well, today's guest is someone that I've known since my college days at Murray State, and I have just been amazed to see her grow and succeed in so many different fields over the years. And when Bobby and I, were trying to think of someone we might invite onto the show to talk with us about self-care, it occurred to me that Marcy would be perfect. She has a great working knowledge and expertise, if you will, of many different areas of self-care, from massage therapy to yoga and juicing, just to name a few. So I'm officially introducing you now to Marcy Snodgrass. She is our expert today for self-care. Marcy, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today to talk about the importance of self-care. I believe that you have so much expertise to share in so many different ways of practicing self-care. So if you could, please just start us off by sharing your background and a little bit of what led you on your own self-care journey.
Sure. Oh my gosh, Heidi, I'm so excited to be here today.
Yay.
So thanks for having me. I love to be able to share anytime that to get one more person doing self-care is a win in my book. So really what got me on the journey was in college. I was having really bad migraine headaches. And I went to a body worker or massage therapist, and it had such an impact on me that it actually became part of my career later on. But ended up finding out a couple of years later that I needed open heart surgery. And this was the thing that got me through until then. And I realized how important self-care was. But even after having open heart surgery at 23, I realized that I was going to be on medication the rest of my life. They told me that I would need to have surgeries the rest of my life. And it came to the point that it felt so overwhelming to me to think about taking medicine the rest of my life or having more surgeries that I felt like I would rather not be here than to continue doing that. And I thought, there's got to be another way. Like, I've got to be able to figure out how to heal my own body. And that was really when I found yoga and changed my nutrition. And this was probably 10 to 13 years into the process. And then I started juicing and all of those things. But it was such a long process. But I realized that self-care had to be part of my life because I was also a workaholic. So in those years that I was like taking the medicine, having more surgeries, I was such a workaholic that I realized if I was going to do life long-term, that I had to put some measures into place to protect myself. And that was self-care for me. And so when I started doing all of those things, it just completely changed my life. And that's why I'm such an advocate for it now.
So we hear so many people saying how important self-care is, especially since COVID. But what does that really mean, and why is it important?
So we all live in our heads a lot, right? We're just up here thinking all the time. And we forget that we have a body sometimes. And we're so disconnected from our bodies because we are just thinking and running and doing, and we're just so activity driven. And especially for women, we feel like busyness equals worthiness. And if we can ever switch that mindset to taking care of ourselves, it's not selfish, but we tend to live in a place of guilt and obligation. You know, so many of us have grown up on guilt, shame, obligation. And it's really one of those things that we have to break that cycle. and realize that self-care is selfless instead of selfish. And it's a cliche because we've heard it so many times and so few people practice it. But self-care is just simple. It doesn't have to be like this humongous routine that you do every day. It can look different for every person. It's like, when you start to think about a diet, it's, you might as well die. So it's like one of those things with self care. If you think about changing your entire routine, you'll never stick with it.
Mm.
And so you just have to think about what are the things that are just important to me? What gives me life? What gives me passion? And that's how you start your self care routine.
So, when you're talking about starting, I guess, a self care routine, although the way you just described it kind of makes me think that it shouldn't be a big routine. It should be something simple and connected to what gives you passion and what makes you joyful. What are some of the barriers that people should be ready for when starting to take self care more seriously? And how can you avoid those hurdles?
I mean, really, it's setting time because people always just say, I don't have enough time. I have too much to do. I can't schedule that in. That's the main thing that's going to come up every single time. And the way you can get over that is just saying, okay, just 10 minutes. What if you just took 10 minutes a day? And whatever the thing is, sometimes if you got someone who's got 3 kids at home, they just need 10 minutes sitting on the couch doing nothing. Like that is self care. Sometimes it's about getting activity. For me, yoga is a huge part of self care. I love going and getting a massage, but unfortunately, so many people have thought a spa is the only self care that there is, and either that's a fit for them or it's not. But it makes it makes people not be able to do it because they're just thinking in their head that's the only thing. Oh, I have to go have a spa day. No, it can be maybe you like to journal, maybe you like to read. Sit down with a book for 10 minutes. That's self care. Breathing. I just feel like, if you take a deep breath right now, like it makes you feel completely different. It will, we breathe with like 10% of our lungs. So if we can just take 5 or 10 really deep breaths, it just will shift your mood. And it just happens so quickly. And I was reading this thing the other day that was if you take 10-second breaks where you're just doing nothing, 10 seconds, that's so minimal. But if you just take a 10-second break where you're doing nothing at all, not thinking, not doing anything except breathing, then you're more productive. And I think we just have to realize that it can be so simple. Anything that you like to do, I just tell people like jot down a few things. Jot down like 5 things that you like to do. And then just pick one that like, okay, this fits in my schedule this week or every day. I'm a real advocate of self-care every day. So if you can take 10 minutes, like 10 minutes reading a book every day, and sometimes it's like playing a video game, whatever it is, whatever speaks to you that you can just be in that moment where it's just pure relaxation.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, how often should we be practicing self-care? So it's something like not once a week. I mean, actually, I guess, it's whenever you can do it, but we want to try to build to doing something every day, right?
For me, I believe so. Maybe everyone can't fit it in every day, or it looks different every day. So, like maybe 3 times a week you're going to the gym, 3 times a week, you're doing something, going out kayaking or something. That can be, you can do that once a week, 3 times a week, whatever. But daily, it is important just to have a reset every single day. And it doesn't like I like to do mine sometimes before I even get out of the bed. I'll just lay in the bed and take about 10 deep breaths. And, the old grateful list is always a good one.
Mm.
Doing like 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for every day. Like, you really can't start your day off in a bad mood if you're thinking first thing, what am I grateful for? And it's just something so simple. And, we all kind of think a little cheesy maybe, but it actually works.
I think everybody has gotten well, maybe I just think this because I was in the field of school counseling, but I think everybody has gotten so numb to hearing the words like take a deep breath, like just stop and take a deep breath. But I true am a huge believer in if you force yourself to slow down long enough to take 2 to 3 true deep breaths, I think it makes a huge difference. And like you said, even if you take 10 seconds to reset, or if you're at work and you just stop and force yourself to stand up and stretch for 10 seconds or walk around the block, whatever. But you mentioned like telling people when they're starting out to like make a list of things. Is that how you would suggest someone create their own self-care plan to start for themselves, like a list, or where would you send them to try to start a plan like that?
For me, writing down makes it real.
Mm.
Like, you put it on your calendar, it's real. And just writing things, I'm a pen and paper kind of person. So I love just writing things down so that I can see it. It also gets it out of your head and out of your body. Because, if you're just thinking about all the things, for instance, I have a lot of projects going on all the time. I'm always in my head thinking about all the things that I need to do. If I write it down, then I'm like, okay, I've got this list in front of me. Now I'm not so stressed in my head. But it's easy just to kind of take a little list, write it down, or, if you're a notes person, you can put it in your phone. But it just kind of makes it real, in my opinion. And you can just do simple things. And I think people just overthink it. But we're so detached from our bodies. We need some things to help us get into the body. And since COVID has happened, so many people work from home now. And so, like if you're at the office, you're getting up and you're moving around and things like that. But at home, we get settled into our home office. We're not moving around. And even myself, I've noticed that I'm sitting for hours and hours. And as opposed to when I was teaching yoga every day and I'm, up and moving all the time. And so it's much more important to get up and move and stretch for physical reasons, even, like the more you sit, the more likely it is to have blood clots in the legs, things like that. And so it's really important just to get up and move. I've gotten to where I just like get up and take a walk every few hours just down the road. So living in Tampa, it's easy to do, because it's nice and sunny. But, so it just helps me to want to get out in the sunshine. But it is important to get up and move, especially because so many of us are isolated. We're just sitting at a desk at home all day. You're on the computer. And that's also another piece of self-care is social interaction. Man, we have separated ourselves so much throughout this last couple of years. It's been hard. It's like post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Like, because people have just been through a rough couple of years and we're so isolated that we need interaction. And so sometimes just going and getting a coffee with someone or having a meal together, like that's self-care as well.
Getting out of your own heads. All right, so I'm going to take us into a different area. Marcy, you also, when I followed you on Facebook and Instagram, you also did a lot of juicing.
Yes.
Do you still do that?
I do. I do less of it myself, and I buy it at a juice bar because it's so accessible now.
Okay.
I remember that I was like the first person to open a juice bar in Murray, Kentucky. But when you go into Nashville, there's like 20 juice bars, and in Tampa, it's the same thing. So It's so accessible now, but I remember like having to teach people about the benefits of juicing. And it is, I love juicing because I feel like it's a great way to get extra nutrients into the body. Um, our food is so depleted, our soil is so depleted. And so it gives an easy way to get good nutrients into the body.
Any great recipes? Where do we get our great recipes for that? What are the top things you put in your ginger? Beet juice? Carrot juice? What are your tops? I want to hear your favorite recipe.
Oh gosh. Well, you always have to have some greens. So you got to do kale or spinach.
Okay.
And I promise you can make it taste good. I love ginger in all of my juices. So I like putting kale, a little bit of apple. You want to be careful not to make it too sweet. I mean, sometimes I actually do have a watermelon mint juice sitting in my fridge right now. Every once in a while, you can do a little sweet. But I like some greens, a little bit of apple, some ginger. You can do one with beets. I know like people are like, beets, but you can put beets, ginger, lemon, and apple together.
Mm-hmm.
So good. It builds the blood. It helps to let the platelets flow easier as well. So there's so much benefit to that. It lowers the blood pressure. But it's also like, it will taste good. I promise. Like, even if you don't like beets, you just put like equal parts of beet and apple and then lemon and then your ginger in, and it's like nice. It really tastes pretty good. And, so that's a good one. You don't want to have too much of that. You can just have like 8 ounces. You could have it every day if you wanted to. But one thing to remember anytime you have beets, it is when you go to the bathroom, you're going to think you're bleeding, but you're not. It's just beets.
Oh my gosh.
Good to know.
Wow.
So you don't juice every day? You don't have juices every day?
Right now, I would say I don't. No, I used to. I used to have juices every day, and it depends on how often I go grocery shopping here. Because, like right now, I desperately need to go grocery shopping, and so I'll get enough that I have something for every day. I like to do little ginger shots because they're good for fighting inflammation. So like somebody who has arthritis, that type of thing, it's really good to have a ginger shot every day. You can do ginger apple or ginger honey and lemon. And so they actually have those at Whole Foods that they're already made up. You can grab them. They're, super easy just to have 1 or 2 of those a day. So I always kind of stock up on those. Now, I love when I juice for myself because it just is so fresh. Like when you can have it straight out of the juicer, it's awesome. But these days I've been more about convenience. And so it's, and it makes it more accessible for people to just go and pick it up. Now, I was in Mexico. I stayed in Cabo for like a month, and you will get the freshest, most like juices for like $2.50. It's like amazing. Like what I would pay $8 or $10 for here, I was getting like for $2.50 to $5 max in Mexico. I was like, it was awesome. And I'm like watching them make them. It was so good.
So all you have to do to get your nutrition in order is just visit Mexico.
Exactly.
That's all the self-care you need.
That's all you have to do.
Vacation.
We'll file that under travel and nutritional self-care.
I've been traveling since I was like 19. So that's always part of my self-care. But yeah, you just have to make sure you don't do too much on the tacos and tequila while you're there. But a little bit is good. That's self-care too.
Balance and moderation. Balance and moderation.
Yeah, I'd like to explore that more. Have you ever dreamt of a world in which you could get local, fresh groceries delivered right to your front door? Well, stop daydreaming, because you live in that world. Instacart gives you unlimited grocery delivery for one low monthly fee. You'll save enough time and money to start any new hobby you'd like, and say goodbye to getting nickel and dimed every time you use some other delivery service app. Forget that one key ingredient to make some delicious, healthy juice? Instacart can deliver it right to your front door in as little as 1 hour. Instacart makes it easy to shop at multiple stores and see deals in your area, so you get to save money while avoiding tedious shopping trips. Every item you order is hand-selected by shoppers based on your preferences, and they'll even keep your eggs safe. To start your 14-day free trial, follow the link in the show notes to let Instacart know that we sent you and help support the show. Instacart. Never set foot in a grocery store again. Marcy, not to throw you a curveball, because I know this isn't on the list of questions, but you made me think about something that I had read a few years ago when you started talking about COVID and people's work schedules changing, and this idea people have where, they're workaholics and you don't give yourself time, or you don't think you have time to give yourself that self-care you need. I read an article a few years ago and I think this was in France, that the majority of companies have switched to a 4-day work week, and they encourage their employees to take an extra day each week to give themselves that self-care. And so they moved to like 32-hour work weeks, and it turned out that those employees were just as, if not more productive than your traditional American workforce. I was curious if you knew anything about that or had any opinions about the length of the work week and how that can affect self-care.
I am a total advocate for that. I love that idea. We actually did that when I owned the Swan Salon. We actually did that with our schedules, because I feel like it is important. If you can put someone where they have enough rest and recoup time, they're so much more productive in the time that they're actually at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a huge advocate of 4-day work week. And I think more companies should try it and just see what happens.
I have also noticed that a lot of companies are putting a greater emphasis on exercise and encouraging employees to exercise. My wife's company has, one of those exercise programs where if you get the most steps in a month, you win a gift card, or you can have all these other ways to get points in the challenge, playing a sport or doing a really long exercise, whatever. So I've seen that as well in the workforce, people encouraging physical fitness.
Let me wrap around and back to our conversation before. I wanted to ask you, because you said something before about social is also another aspect of self-care. So if you were to sit down and Google, which I did, what self-care really is, but every site has a different list. There are lots of different aspects to self-care. So there's physical, intellectual, social, recreational, environmental, which I was like, I hadn't thought about that one as a possibility, but okay. Spiritual, financial.
That one sounds impossible.
And emotional. So are there others that you can think of? Those are just the ones I found when I was like really sitting down and trying to think of what are the different aspects of self-care. And which ones do you believe are the most important that we should be working into our lives and practicing?
Yes, all of them.
All of them.
There are certain ones that, listen, don't even get me started on financial self-care, because I think that is an area that we are so negligent in that we need to really up the self-care there, and our own knowledge on financial literacy. That's a whole other podcast in itself. When we're talking about all of these areas, like emotional is super important. I believe that anytime we have a physical illness, there's an emotional component to it. And we're so trained to not feel our emotions. What's the first thing we tell little boys? Like, don't cry, get over it, don't cry.
Buck it up.
We tell people all the time, don't feel your emotions. Like, it's okay, stop crying. Don't be angry. Like, but those are all emotions that we have. And so we spend so much time like shutting down our emotions that, man, that has to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that energy and dis-ease sets into the body when we can't fully express our emotions or when we can't feel what we need to be feeling. And so I really feel like emotional self-care is super important, but also physical self-care. I mean, let's be honest, we're a country that is super obese and we don't take care of ourselves in a physical sense. And even, I'm not saying like to lose weight necessarily, but feeling healthy. How good the food that you're eating, how good does it make you feel? Does it make you feel fueled or full? And if we can start to think about, okay, I need stuff that makes me feel fueled. Like I should have more energy when I get up from the table, not feeling like I just had Thanksgiving dinner, you know? And so when we think about that and we think about movement, it's so important for our physical body. So I think physical self-care is one that we think about a lot, but we don't do a lot. And so I feel like those are two areas, physical, emotional, and then financial is a third that, those are all important places to be. It's I got divorced this last year. There's there are a lot of divorced people in the country, and we don't think about women, especially, need to be financially secure and stable. And there are so many pieces that aren't talked about financially. Even when you're growing up, like all these things about, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, things like that. That's the kind of messages that we're receiving as we grow up. So it's super important to learn and get the knowledge for yourself so that you feel like, I know what I'm doing here financially. I know how to take care of myself financially. And I know how to not only take care of myself, but to thrive and go way beyond and be a boss at it.
You are, Marcy. You're a boss.
You might have heard people say that everybody and their mom has a podcast these days. And that's technically not true. My mom doesn't have a podcast that I know of. But if she wanted to start one, she could, because anyone can start their own podcast. However, if you don't know how to get started, podcasting can get overwhelming pretty quickly. And that's where Buzzsprout can help. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch a professional podcast. I know this because we use Buzzsprout to publish every single episode of our show. And we're not the only ones. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout gets our podcast listed on every major podcasting platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We also get to use Buzzsprout's intuitive, user-friendly website, along with audio players you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics that show you how people are listening, tools to promote new episodes, and so much more. You can also learn from Buzzsprout's team of passionate podcast enthusiasts who want to see you succeed. Buzzsprout publishes blog posts, podcast episodes, and YouTube videos every single week so you can learn podcasting like the back of your own hand. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you, and it helps support our show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast.
I think all of those aspects feed into each other, which you were kind of saying, like if you're financially stressed, you're having emotions that you're pulling down, holding in, and then it comes out physically. If all these things lead into something else if we're not careful. If you're not getting out there and being social with others, that's a depressive thing. Sometimes you just have to get out there and interact with others.
And that's the biggest thing. I feel like people think I have to have this big moment of like New Year's resolutions. No, you don't. It's just like, okay, I'm going to eat. How many people have said, I'm going to start a diet on Monday, so I'm going to eat like crazy over the weekend to prepare for it? That's ridiculous. I was gonna say it's asinine, and it is because if you really think about it, like just start today, start tomorrow, whatever. Like just go ahead and put it into your practice instead of thinking I have to prepare for it. My mom started a diet every Monday of her life, and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever I eat on the weekend because I'm gonna start on Monday. More likely than not, you're going to stop by Tuesday. So instead, just do it today. Like just go ahead and get started, even if it's 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. If it's taking a walk, if it's reading a book, if it's taking a bubble bath, if you know me at all, since I was in my 20s, I take a bubble bath every single day because I went to this class with Mike Vance, who wrote the book Thinking Out of the Box. And he was talking, and he just said, a bubble bath a day takes all your cares away. I don't know, for some reason, I was in my 20s and it just stuck with me. And I just turned 50. And I literally, when I travel, I have to have a hotel that has a bathtub. And a lot of them are putting in showers only right now. And I'm like, I'm not on board with this. I still need a bathtub. So it can be little things, but just start now.
It sounds like what you're saying is practice makes perfect. You kind of have to practice doing those little self-care things over time. Because I liked your analogy of starting a diet, and how if you always say, I'll just start over tomorrow, then you're right. You'll never keep up with it, and inevitably you will just start over very soon. And so the great thing about self-care, at least in the way that you have described it, is that it's doing stuff you enjoy, right? I know people always talk about how like exercise is hard, eating healthy is hard, but if a way you practice self-care is to take a bubble bath or read a book you like or listen to a great podcast that you really enjoy, like this one, then whatever that might be, do it. And don't tell yourself that you don't have time to do it. It sounds like that's the most important step, is to start small and practice it.
Make it a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly, because it takes forever. If you're just trying to have that one big moment. But yes, if you can just do every day, little practice, little habits, it does become, it becomes part of your routine. And when we're talking about self-care, it should be joyful. It doesn't have to be hard. It should be joyful because it's what refuels you. It's what nourishes you. It's all those good things that feel like cuddling up in a warm blanket. It's like all the things that feel nice and cozy, like do those things. And it doesn't have to be huge. It can just be, you're exactly right. It's just small.
So I wanted to circle back to something you had kind of alluded to earlier when talking about letting your kids just like go sit and, be able to do nothing for 10 minutes. And that can be self-care for them. How do you talk to your kids, but how can people talk to kids and teach them about self-care?
I think it's super important early on. And, you can take kids to yoga class with you. You can take them on a hike or just a walk outside. You can teach them just to also have them write down, what is it that makes you feel relaxed? Kids are in a high stress society. And especially like there's so much influence from media that just makes them on high alert all the time. And so what are the things that, have them say, what is it that makes you feel relaxed? What is it that makes you feel peaceful? Because that's a really key word. There are very few things that make us feel peaceful because we're always going, always doing, and we're very rarely being.
Yeah.
It's funny, but we probably should have been called human doings instead of human beings. But ask them what feels good to you, what feels relaxing, what makes you feel just like you can feel like, and then let them do that. Sometimes as parents, we try to step in and tell them what to do or feel like they should be doing what we want them to do. And we have to give them some space to be their own person. And that includes self-care.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, what are some, and I'm going to take away this question before I even ask it, but I was going to ask, what things should people consider the best practices that you recommend they have a part of their plan? But honestly, it's different for everyone. Like, the areas are important, like financial and social and yada, yada, yada. But what works for each one of us is going to be different. So you just kind of have to, I guess, sit down and take a moment with yourself and decide what works for me. But are there resources that you do suggest people use? I know you mentioned the one book a moment ago.
Oh, yeah, that one it's a really old book.
Okay.
The box. There are definitely some resources. And, you can Google anything. That is the thing. Like, now you don't have to pay for, like, I love a group class. So going to yoga, like, I love the process of going to class and having other people, like a community. But also, if you want to do yoga at home, you can Google it. There's, go to YouTube. There are free yoga classes on there all the time. And yes, it does have to be an individual self-care thing just because it's about what's important to you. But there are general things that fall into the self-care category. And there are so many resources out there. And there are community classes for different things, or even just getting involved in, since I recently moved, I've looked at all the networking groups here of just going to the beach, and I'm not talking about networking for business, just for social interaction. There's groups everywhere. And so you can find those resources really easily. And a lot of things can be just personally done, but I feel like it's super easy just to kind of sit down and say, okay, what feeds my soul? And it doesn't take 5 minutes to figure that out because what are the things that you love? My sister, if I was like, go to a yoga class with me, she'd be like, okay. But if I was like, go to a quilting weekend with me, which I would be like, oh, what? She would be like, yes, we're totally going. That's my thing. So it is super individual about what feeds a person. But in general, I would say YouTube and Google are like the best resources for anything.
I love that. That works for me. I'm the Google queen.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We really enjoyed our conversation with Marcy. This is another one of those classic cases where our conversation was just so dang good we couldn't fit everything that we wanted to include into one episode. So there will be future episodes where Marcy talks a little bit more about other forms of self-care. Today's episode was more about general self-care. So we hope that you'll tune in for any future episodes involving Marcy, where she can help educate you a little bit more on how to take care of yourself. In the meantime, we hope you'll head over to our YouTube page and our Buzzsprout page and hit the bells and the buttons and subscribe and like and follow and whatever else you need to do to make sure you don't miss anything from our show. We are also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can follow us there to get updates on future episodes. And we will see you in the next episode.